She was 58 years old, and Mary had long grown used to being a mere shadow in her own home. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and people look at you as if you're just part of the furniture? Like an old, familiar cabinet that's long overdue to be replaced by something modern and glossy. That was exactly how Arthur looked at her. Her husband, a high-profile attorney, was a man accustomed to taking whatever he wanted from life. Over 30 years of marriage, he had mastered the art of looking right through her. To him, Mary was a reliable backbone, a pair of steady hands, the woman who would always have a crisp shirt ready, and a perfect dinner on the table. But as a person, as a woman capable of inspiring passion, she had ceased to exist for him 15 years ago. He didn't even bother to hide his affairs. Brief calls in the bathroom, the scent of expensive perfume on his blazer, Mary saw it all. But she stayed silent. She believed her time had passed, that at her age, one should simply settle for the sake of the kids and their social standing. She felt invisible, transparent. But she didn't yet know that one evening would completely overturn her perception of herself and leave her husband trembling with terror. That evening began with Arthur's usual disdain. An important dinner party was planned at their house. Mark Alexander, the new CEO of a major investment firm, was the guest of honor. He was the man who would decide whether Arthur became a senior partner or ended up on the street. Mark was only 25, but legends circulated about his ruthlessness and business intuition. Mary, wear something plain. No need for those elegant attempts of yours. Just serve the courses and don't interrupt. Mark Alexander is in a different league. He's not interested in your thoughts on gardening, Arthur snapped, not even glancing at his wife as he straightened his tie. I understand, Arthur, she replied quietly. There was so much venom in his words, so much certainty of her worthlessness, that something snapped inside Mary. She put on a black dress made of heavy silk. It wasn't provocative, but it hugged her figure as if embracing her, highlighting a mature, deep beauty that Arthur had long stopped noticing. She didn't use bold makeup, only an accent on her eyes, where a lifetime of sorrow and hidden strength resided. When the doorbell rang, Arthur practically jumped. He fussed about, straightening napkins, acting like a valet. Then Mark walked in, tall, with a cold gaze in his gray eyes, wearing a bespoke suit. He looked like a predator entering a room. Arthur rushed to him with an outstretched hand, desperate to impress. Mr. Alexander, such an honor. Meet my wife, Mary. She's the one who keeps this place running, Arthur said, dismissively waving a hand toward her without even a proper introduction. Mark froze. He ignored Arthur's hand. His gaze was locked on Mary. The silence in the foyer became heavy. 5 seconds passed. 10. Arthur began to cough nervously, but Mark kept looking. There was no mere politeness in his eyes. There was recognition and an intense admiration that took Mary's breath away. Mary, Mark said. His voice was low and velvety. Finally, I see you in person. Arthur, you said you had a homemaker here, but you forgot to mention that your wife is the most breathtaking woman I have ever met. Arthur stood frozen. His brain refused to process the information. The golden boy of the industry, the man pursued by the city's top models, was complimenting his old wife? That was the first spark. But Mary didn't know that in the next minute, Mark would do something that would make her heart race in a way she hadn't felt in decades. Dinner turned into a surreal spectacle. Arthur tried to talk about projections, stocks, and mergers, but Mark wasn't listening. He was listening to Mary. He asked her about art, her life, her perspective. And every time she answered, he leaned forward as if catching every vibration of her voice. Mary, you mentioned you love classic Italian cinema, Mark said, ignoring Arthur's attempt to crack a joke. You have the eyes of a woman who understands life's true drama. That's what my generation lacks, depth. There is an ocean in you, Mary, and Arthur, it seems, is used to wading in puddles. It was a direct insult. Arthur turned pale. He sat there gripping his fork so hard his knuckles turned white. He didn't understand. In his world, Mary was old furniture. Why did this powerful young man see in her what Arthur hadn't seen in 30 years? At one point, Arthur stepped away to the wine cellar. A heavy silence hung in the dining room. Mark slowly stood up. He didn't keep his distance. He walked so close to Mary that she could smell his scent, sandalwood, leather, and something primal. "He doesn't deserve you," Mark whispered. His voice vibrated right at her ear. "I saw how he looks at you, like a trophy he stopped caring about, but you are a masterpiece hidden in a dark gallery." "Mr. Alexander, you are crossing a line," Mary whispered, her voice trembling. "Lines are for people too afraid to take what they want," he said, reaching out and slowly running his fingertips along her shoulder. Mary shuddered. An electric charge surged through her. "Your skin, it holds a wisdom and grace that young girls can't comprehend. I want you to know, I didn't come here tonight for Arthur. I came for you." Mary looked into his eyes and saw recognition. Recognition of her as a woman, as a force. In that moment, her invisibility vanished. She was alive again. When Arthur returned, the atmosphere had shifted. He felt it instantly. Mark sat in his place, relaxed and commanding, while Mary was radiant. There was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there since their wedding day. "Arthur, I've made a decision regarding the partnership," Mark said dryly. Arthur leaned in, desperate for a yes. "I will only sign on one condition. All future negotiations must be handled by Mary. I like her vision. If she says yes, you get the partnership. If not, you're out." Arthur's world collapsed. His career and his future were now in the hands of the woman he had belittled for years. He looked at Mary with horror, and for the first time, she looked down at him. She saw his fear, his pettiness, and she realized the power she now held. The following weeks were a dream. Mark called her every day. At first it was business, but it quickly became personal. He took her to exclusive restaurants. He sent her flowers Arthur never would, rare orchids, and every time they met, he reminded her how magnetic she was. "Mary, don't hide your hands," he said in a candlelit booth. "These lines tell the story of a life well lived. I want to know every chapter." He took her hand and kissed her palm. Mary felt a volcano awakening. Social norms, the 30-year age gap, none of it mattered. He made her feel young, not because of her looks, but because her energy was more powerful than any 20-year-old's. One evening, while Arthur was away, Mark arrived unannounced. He was in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, looking dangerous and magnetic. "I'm done playing games," he said. "I don't want to talk about business. I want you, now." "Mark, I'm 58, she started, but he silenced her with a look. That night, in the bedroom where she had spent years feeling alone, Mary learned what true passion was. He looked at her as if she were the center of his universe. He told her that her experience was the ultimate aphrodisiac, that her strength was what he had been searching for. The next morning, Mary woke up a different woman. She was no longer Arthur's wife. She was herself. But the biggest shock was still to come. After Mark left, Mary found an old, faded photograph in his coat pocket. It was her, a young 20-year-old Mary, in a park, and next to her was her old best friend who had died tragically when her son was just a child. Mary froze. Mark was that child. He had been looking for her. He knew her story from his mother's journals. He knew exactly how Arthur had spent 30 years breaking her spirit. This wasn't just attraction. It was a debt being paid. But did Mark love her, or was she just a mission? Arthur walked in, looking pathetic. "Mary, Mark called. The deal is on. We're set for life. You really pulled it off." He tried to hug her, but Mary pushed him back so hard he hit the wall. "Get out, Arthur. Pack your things. This house, the firm, everything. It's mine now. Mark made sure you have nothing left." Arthur didn't recognize the woman standing before him. She wasn't furniture. She was a victor. Later, Mary called Mark. "I found the photo. Why didn't you tell me?" There was a pause. "Because I wanted you to fall in love with yourself before you felt you owed me anything. My mother loved you, and I love you even more." Mary smiled. She knew there would be talk and judgment, but she also knew that for the first time in 58 years, she was truly alive. She had proven that a woman has no expiration date. Her power and her right to happiness are eternal.